Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Grind. My name is Kelly Johnson, your fun and friendly host. We are on episode 26 of season 2, the very best one yet. Grillsman Inc. and the Daily Grind are coming together this holiday season, giving away 1 week's worth of meal plan valid at $125 for free. How to enter? Be sure to follow on Instagram Grillsman and the Daily Grind, and we'll be selecting one winner on December 31st. The contest begins on December 17th when our episode with Ian, the founder, releases. Stay tuned and happy holidays. Here's your Kelly Fast fact of the day. The term podcast is a mashup of iPod and broadcast. It was coined by a journalist in 2004. And there's your fast fact. I would like to keep the introduction short. We have a special guest on today. Our show, we have Dr. Joel Bryant. He's the director for Dreamers Only Academy, founder of Bryant Leadership Coaching, award-winning author and ghostwriter, specializing in helping individuals and organizations achieve greatness. Bryant lives and works in Charlotte, North Carolina. So welcome to the show, Dr. Joel Bryant.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to our conversation.
Definitely. I'm looking forward to our conversation as well, and excited to learn more about your story and have you inspire our listeners out there in the world. So I guess first and foremost, Joel, can you tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do?
Okay, I am residing now in Charlotte, North Carolina. Been here for about most of my adult life. I am a former corporate trainer turned university educator turned author, and that's the short story, but that's what I do, and I love it.
That's great. I like it. Nice and short and simple. You have quite the grind going on, as our listeners will learn further in our conversation today. I guess first and foremost, Joel, how did you become inspired for working in business?
I've always had a fascination with enterprise. It seems to be the place where life and results meet. And early in my life, I didn't want to just live in the world. I want to have the ability to influence and impact it. So I've always had a fascination and a fixation on corporate enterprise as a young man.
That's great. And you've had quite a story. One of your first jobs, you mentioned you were a trainer for Dun & Bradstreet Corporation. Can you tell us or just walk us through that journey and that position you had and what it entailed?
Yeah, D&B is an information services company, and I was started in sales with them, inside sales, and I did really, really well. As a matter of fact, the position that I occupied, they created it for me because of my performance. Because I was able to take people who were not performing and who didn't understand certain things about the job. I was able to take those people and move them from being marginal to being excellent and sustain that performance. And so for that, I was rewarded with that position as a trainer, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I learned a lot about human nature and human motivation.
That's great, and you've performed quite exceptionally well at your first job, if my memory serves me right. You're one of the top salespeople.
Yeah, I think the year that I actually resigned, the year after that, but I was named like out of about 35,000 people worldwide in the top 61 worldwide. About 30-something thousand people. And, that was good, but it was not satisfying. I didn't want to do that again the next year. I had bigger aspirations than being a star in a corporation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you tell us more? I mean, that's quite the accomplishment, but from that success that you had in that role and then your life experiences following, what led you then to later working in business development, becoming a lecturer at UNC Charlotte, earning your MA in Liberal Studies, advanced certification, professional and applied ethics, ED in educational leadership and administration? I mean, the list could go on, but can you walk our listeners through what steps that you took then after that final year at Dun & Bradstreet?
Well, what I did was psychologically, I honored my discontent, and then I honored my desire. That was the psychological or the emotional portions. And then I came up with a strategy, a focus. I said, okay, what are you going to do, Joe? You want to be a writer? So I actually wrote a book while I was there called Work, Why, Diary of a Dreamer, The Anatomy of Greatness. And in this book, I just chronicled my attempts to get people who weren't performing to be able to apply some concepts, techniques, and strategies to move them to the next level. And I was shocked that many people didn't want to do it. They were content to be mediocre. And so I quit on October 2nd, 2000. Actually, week after 9/11, I ended up homeless because I just spent all my resources just chasing this dream. But here again, as fate would have it, or as desire would create it, that same book that I wrote before I left won me $10,000 in 2002. Now, let me take those resources and begin to rebuild my life. I went to school. Yeah, at this time I was like 40 years old. I went and got my BA, finished my BA at 40. I got my master's maybe 2 years later. I did my master's degree in a year. And then I taught at UNC Charlotte for 5 years in the philosophy department. I quit in 2008 and I went and got my doctorate. I did that in 3 years and like 7 months. And all the time I'm writing multiple books. So I think to make the change from, put it like this, to change the grind to a groove, you must improve your grade. And this day we say scale up your skills. And so that's what I did. But you have to honor your discontent and you have to honor your desire and you have to take action and not look at the friction of motion, which is what most people do.
Really well said there, Joel. Lots of key takeaways here in regards to just taking action, like you said, chasing that dream, but the desire to create. You mentioned you read a handful of books while you were pursuing these degrees, which is super incredible. I can attest, or just a little fraction, studying my MBA currently right now and working, and I can just imagine what involves writing not one book but multiple books through your journey, through your career in education. That's quite the accomplishment. Mm-hmm.
When I look back, it wasn't hard. I look at it this way: things are only hard because I'm not working in the field of my dream, and I've not aligned my desire with my sense of I can do this. So when I was doing my doctorate and I'm doing my dissertation, and that's pretty intense because there's different kinds of writing, there's different kinds of intellectual approach. But I actually wrote 6 books while I was doing my dissertation, and it was not hard. Because why? I wanted to be a writer. I was writing. I wanted to be an educator. I was acquiring the credentials and the experience to do that. So what was hard? It may have been effort, and I can choose to describe the effort as hard, or I chose to be grateful to have the opportunity to be challenged in multiple directions. And the reason I say that is the words that we use to describe our experience can make it pleasurable or painful. What was hard was going to work every day and being number one in the company. What was hard was going to work every day and people recognizing for my performance. That brought me no satisfaction. it was empty.
Definitely. Hey, you recognize, though, I think what we talk a lot on the Daily Grind, or what we preach here on the podcast, is, chase something that you're interested in, do something that you're passionate about, and you realize that, hey, you weren't satisfied at that job, so you moved forward and to what you do today, and you worked hard. Is a big word. It's a small word too, but it has a lot of meaning behind it. And just coming across those challenges and overcoming them to do something that you enjoy, I think is really important. And you're a great example for us, our listeners out here on the Daily Grind.
Well, I think we have to understand it's a privilege to pursue your passion. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to have a passion. It's another to have I call it to have the guts. I spoke this week at a gathering, and I talked about switching to the 3G network. And I know we're on 5G, but I said you got to have goals, you got to have guts, and you got to develop your gifts. And once you do those 3 things, you begin to change how you describe. Were things challenging? Yes. Did I know how to write a book? No. Did I have ever done a dissertation? No. All that was new for me. Statistics, advanced statistics, all those academic, intellectual, erudite courses, were they challenging? Yes. But I loved the challenge. Was why it was a privilege to have the courage to pursue my passion, and I refuse to defile or defame that by saying it was hard. My hunger overcame the hardness and this harshness. So
Mhm. I was even thinking too, like the other day, just if your life isn't challenging, you're doing it wrong in a sense that you're not going beyond your comfort zone. You're not going beyond your potential or what you can be down the road, what you leave a legacy in. I think the words that you mentioned, yeah, it's a privilege to have a passion and a privilege to do something bigger than yourself. My mantra right now I've been thinking about is just to do better, and I think this fits really well with having those goals and guts and gifts like you mentioned. It just fits together in terms of what the daily grinder is and who you are and what defines yourself.
you're right. I mean, comfort zones. And I think now with this pandemic, we've all been forced to disrupt and to reconstruct our reality. And now people don't have the luxury of pondering because they've been pushed. See, sometimes, one of my favorite authors said this way, Ralph Waldo Emerson, he says, we need somebody in our life who will demand greatness of us. And what circumstances do, like this pandemic, it has demanded people to reach deep and to find more resources and to become more resourceful. And of course, out of that comes resilience. Because if you don't do that, you will take the path of least resistance in a way that breeds passivity and complacency.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can agree likewise. Just there's a lot of other people out in the world that haven't realized this or need to take advantage or just to reach out to yourself or other resources that are able to help them answer these questions or move forward, give them that push or give them that motivation, that drive to really do something to reconstruct your reality like you mentioned. So yeah, speaking of resources and just reaching out to talented individuals like yourself, so I mentioned in the introduction and even in your story as well, your brand, Joel Bryant Leadership Coaching and Consulting, quite the teacher here that we have the opportunity to interview on the podcast. Can you tell us more about your leadership coaching and consulting?
I help people unlock the emotional blocks that do two things: hinder their progress and hinder their enjoyment. Because you can be pursuing a thing and be in so much anguish and angst and anxiety and uncertainty and ambiguity and frustration. What's the point? If I said this, if there's no joy in the journey, you're going to end up jaded. So what I focus on is providing tactical and practical concepts and then psychological maneuvers that are legit, that help you change how you see. Because what's the point of going for something and every play is like a 2 minute warning. Every play you live and die by every result. That's a tough way to live. Sometimes you play better under pressure. You watch football teams. You said they could have played that way the whole game. They'd never been in this situation in the last 2 minutes. But life is too long to live in an atmosphere of constant urgency and stress. So that's what I focus on with the coaching. Is helping to eradicate, minimize, and eliminate that unnecessary stress in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Really well said. That's great, Joel. You're able to inspire others as well as help them in their journey through their process, whether they have their own business or work in a corporate setting like myself, or the list could go on and on in regards to the people that you've inspired or have impacted underneath your brand, which is incredible. I love the comparison to football and sports in general, because I feel like if you have a business mindset, it does you can apply that or relate. It's easier to relate to a sports setting, obviously, during this NFL football season, which is great. So, yeah, you have the leadership and coaching. You also have your Dreamers Only Academy underneath it. So, can you tell us more about that as well?
That is I'm re-engineering that because of the pandemic, but the purpose is to provide a digital medium where people can access videos, lectures, and just me talking about the journey towards greatness. Because it's one thing to be excited and provide motivation and inspiration, but sometimes people need consistent coaching. They need sometimes, how do you handle this situation? And I haven't been in every situation, but I've been mentored by some very good people in my life. I get mentoring. I mean, I still have a couple of mentors. So with that, it's just a digital platform that I'm re-engineering that I'm gonna relaunch next year, and I'm just gonna walk and I'm gonna spend the entire 2021 because my first book was entitled Journey Towards Greatness. And I'm going to take that book and turn that book into a master class on how to maximize and optimize your pursuit of greatness. And that's what the Academy is going to focus on next year. Mm-hmm. And it'll be available, wherever you are. Because I mean, if you don't re-engineer yourself right now, if you don't do it now, you're going to be left behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, time is really valuable in taking the bull by its horns, in a sense, or your life by its horn, or however that key phrase is. But I really enjoy too, Joel, with your program, with your academy, lots of keywords that you mentioned again. Persistence, having that mentor. A lot of our Daily Grind special guests that we had on our show, season 1 and season 2, have had mentors in their lifetime to, do incredible things down the road. So Joel can attest. He's worked with a lot of different people in their journey towards greatness. So I love that branding. So how'd you, I guess too, with the branding of that name or your key phrase, your what we know Joel Bryant for, Journey Towards Greatness, did you come up, what was your aha moment in writing that book too, or just that phrase?
It is an expression of who I am. Mm-hmm. It is not a aesthetic creation that allows somebody to capture what I'm saying. It's an expression of who I am. Mm-hmm. I have never, ever, since I've been conscious and conscientious, thought about anything but greatness. I've never thought about average. I've never thought about being fitting in. And so that book is an expression of my essence. People say, Joel, my tag or my moniker is the voice of greatness. I'm developing a podcast next year. It's the voice of greatness because I have spent 30 years studying every element, every aspect of greatness that was available in print and in conversation and historically. Mm-hmm. And so I'm extremely studious and astute when it comes to the mechanics and the dynamics of greatness. Mm-hmm. The book is just who I am.
Mm-hmm. Really well said. I love that expression of your essence. You're quite the professional expert. I could just describe you in so many words, but we have we have a limited time to dive into your story and to learn more about what you all do and things of that nature. So Joel, you also mentioned, I guess fast forward to date, you're award-winning author. You've written 55 books and counting, published 35, ghostwritten 2, while publishing 4 books for other writers. So over the years, what has initially inspired you to write?
My life has been changed by literature. I think, of course, Oprah Winfrey is the biggest advocate of books, but I can attest that when I read about Marco Polo in the 1st and 2nd grade, and now he would get on these trips, and he would go to Italy and get on the gondolas, and he would trade silks, and I found that exciting. And I read about, different people who were politicians back in the day, like prehistory. Those books, I saw myself in these stories, and I told my mother, I would always say, Mom, when I grow up, I said, man, I'm going to change the world. And I've always said that. Now, of course, I haven't, but books expanded my purview of the possible. They awakened me to what I talk about in my latest book. They awakened me to my capacity for immensity, expansion, and transformation. And so I wanted to leave a written record because I said this way, history is simply the chronicle of the impossible.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. Just kind of picking up a book. It's great. It's something that you've seen, again, similar trait that we've come across on our guests on our show, just having something that you enjoy when you're younger and that's really looking back at has really influenced what you do later on in life. And I think that holds true for books and reading, and then thus converting into writing, which is great. Joel, you've completed one that will change the cultural conversation concerning human nature and human condition. It's called The New Being, Preparing for the Emergence of a New Humanity. Tell us more.
That is probably the most powerful book that I've written, and I feel like all my books are great, but this book was a gift. It came to me when I was completing another book, and I was going to take a hiatus from writing. I was saying, okay, when I finish this particular book, I'm through. And at the end of that book, this book came to me. And this book first is challenging the basic premise, the basic historical claim and notion that's rooted in religion that human nature is incorrigible, that human nature is naturally depraved. And when you look at human history, we look at religious history, really in Christianity, if you look at Christianity, those claims are contrary to the promise of the Christian religion that I can become a new person, a new creation, they say. So this book is not a religious book. I examine religion, race, politics, education, economics, and morality. And I talk about how unless we change our narratives about human nature, we nullify our ability to create a juster society. And I show you how it is, and I use it this way. I use this kind of a simple example. It's not exhaustive, but it's instructive. You take a football team. They go 2-14 in 2020. They hire a new coach. They get some new staff. They get a bigger budget, and they get the green light from the ownership. And they keep the same players as a different coaching staff. That coach can bring out of those players, and next year now they go 14-2 instead of 2-14 now. Why? Because the coach brought in a system, he brought in a culture, she brought in an expectation, she brought in an ethos, she awakened those players to their capacity for immensity. And the same players can do more. And human nature is simply the expression of our investment in it. And we let the actions of a few people, relatively speaking, 7 billion people, 7.5 billion people, and we let the actions of 1% of those people extend a narrative that human beings are incorrigible. So I challenge that notion. I challenge that, and I provide a very eloquent and insightful account of how we are in the midst of, even now as we speak, we are in the midst of the emergence of a new humanity. People, but you have to be a student. You have to be a student of history to understand that, because human being is not the height of evolution. See, we're talking about evolution. Human being, Homo sapien, in its current state, is not the height of evolution. Evolution is not finished. So that's what I talk about from an evolutionary standpoint, I would say.
Yeah, definitely, Joel. You go over many different topics. You go deep dive in regards to what you just mentioned. The evolution, human evolution, world's constantly changing. So this is really great. I think it really, connects or resonates with a lot of our listeners on the podcast, as well as people tuning into our show, or even just in general, who you see at the grocery store, who you run into what on the street, or connecting in your own workplace or at the workplace, or even from working remotely. If you're tuning into some Zoom call or listening to a lecture or whatever circumstance, I think this applies to a lot of people's daily grinds out there. I noticed on the book cover, it has volume 1 on your book. Is this a teaser or a possible hint to a series?
Yeah. Actually, when I was writing the book, you're just writing by hand or you type it on whatever. And when I finished it and I put it in book format, I'm like, this is 750 pages. This is too long. So the first volume has 4 chapters. The chapters are, race, was the new being. The first chapter, I sketched the new being. I described its qualities, its characteristics, its competencies, and its abilities. The second chapter is religion in the new being. Third chapter is race in the new being. And then the fourth chapter is politics in the new being. So that's the first volume. And then volume 2, which is already finished, it's already done. It's also 4 chapters. Education and the new being, economics and the new being, religion and the new economics, education, morality, and then language. Because you can't talk about human nature unless you talk about language. I'm everything I am. Think about this as kids, right? I grew up saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words have never hurt me. And I'm going to tell you something. Everything I am is because of the words that I internalize from my environment, that my environment reinforced. So that's what that second volume is about. It contains those 4 chapters. And it's already written. I just won't release it till probably another couple of years.
Great. Wow, we got quite the teaser here on the Daily Grind, which is awesome. I think it fits great with the four chapter approach. You hit over all the key topics that are the core topics that are in today's society that we see on the news and all over the place. So I think our listeners out there will really enjoy picking up a copy of this book, The New Being, which is great. So can you tell us too, I guess, with this latest book that you've had, how it briefly how it connects to your other reads as well?
All of my books, I think I've probably done 35, maybe more, I don't know, but all of my books examine themes of change, growth, and greatness. We're always changing. The great Greek pre-Socratic philosopher Heraclitus said all things are in flux. So we're never standing still. We're never stuck. We may feel that way, but motion is the nature of life. So everything I write, it examines change. And then out of change, you grow. You either grow up or you grow down. You either have evolution or dissolution, right? Even a dead body decomposes at a level that transcends our eyesight. But you come back a few months later, it's not there. And then greatness, greatness, the highest expression of my human potential. Notice I didn't say the highest expression of all my potential, because potential, like air on the planet, cannot be quantified. We don't know how much air there is here. We can speculate, prognosticate, and we can project, but we don't know how much air on the planet, and we don't know how much potential. So I think it's not wise to tell a human being to fulfill their potential. What's wiser is telling them to set a goal, because the goals are concrete, potential is abstract. So all my books, growth, change, growth, and greatness. That's what I deal with in every book that I've written, and will always write about that. I have no other interest.
That's great. That's incredible. I think it'll fit perfectly with your collection, and it continues to grow. We'll have to get you back on the pod soon. Uh, I love again key words here. I love the potential is more abstract and goals are more concrete. I think it's just visual and easy to visualize and just kind of map my road out. I guess my roadmap on what I want to do. Come 2021 or in the following years, both short term and long term goals. We're really goal driven on this podcast as well, so our listeners out there are kind of looking for ways to how can they set those goals, picture what they want to get out of life down the road. And I think within your collection, the change, growth, and greatness, I think it hits on everything. It satisfies. So we will put in the show notes for today's episode where to find Dr. Joel Bryant's literature, of course. Also, Joel, you've made a significant impact sharing your story. How do you think this year, COVID in particular, has influenced you in, I guess, your ability to influence others?
It's made me more aware of the need for deeper human connection. It's made me more aware of the need for a new way of seeing reality. It has made me aware, and it has reinforced the claims that I make in the book about people can do more. They can do better. We can change our society just how we do business. And so, at the same time, it has made me more aware of there is really a dearth of resilience in our country. When you look at the pandemic, you look at the increase in suicide, you look at the increase in mental health issues, you look at the increase in dependency on substance abuse, you look at the increase of domestic violence. These things tell me that there's a lack of human connection that people have that can pull them through tough times. Somebody they can talk to who can provide really meaningful support, not just a shoulder to cry on, because at the end of the day, when you get to crying, you may have stopped crying, but you still have a lot more tears to give unless you change how you see your life. So I just think it's very important during a pandemic and during a crisis. And the word crisis, by the way, just means decision. The only way you overcome a crisis is through courage. And I say it this way: what will help people is first, you have to develop optimism. And optimism is a perception, not an emotion. You have to choose. And here's what people say: well, how can I be optimistic? I just lost my job. Okay, well, join the other millions of Americans who are in the same situation. And then you can't try to find the exception that gives you an exemption from being stronger. Well, but they have savings and they have money and they have, but that's not going, saying that's not going to help you. So you've got to change your internal narrative. See, these are things I was always aware of, but as I read the news and as I interact with people in conversations, I'm seeing how people are unaware of their capacity for immensity and expansion and transformation. And it's because they've never been challenged in a sustained way. See, you know the beauty of goals? Goals challenge you. We call them, we have stretch goals. They challenge us. And you say, wow. And let me give you this kind of a quick story. So I write nonfiction. I don't even hardly read any fiction. So I had a client come to me, it's like, hey, I want a fiction book written. I was like, I don't really write fiction. She said, but you're a writer. I said, yeah, but I don't write fiction. And so we kept talking, and she made it lucrative. I said, okay, Joel, you're a writer. You're building your brand. Take on the project. I took on the project. All she told me was the three characters' name and the scenario, about a 5-minute description. I did not start her book until 2 weeks before I had promised to give it to her. And the week it was due, I went to McDonald's. I don't drink coffee. I bought a large cup of coffee. I stayed up all night, and in one day, I wrote a 220-page book. And I said, God, Joel, but see, now here's a rub, as Hamlet would say. I had written a dissertation, like I had to change my whole dissertation like in 2 days because it was trash according to my advisor. So I stayed up 2 days doing that. That's intellectual erudite, very hard stuff. This little book, as far as I'm concerned, was nothing, but it was fiction. And when I tell you this, Kelly, I had to cut out 30 pages because it was so good. It wrote itself. I said, Joel, I didn't know you could do that. So my next book, when I get back from this writing hiatus, will be a fiction book. So, but that challenged me to do something in a very simple way that I didn't know I could do. And I think that this pandemic is horrendous. I mean, I have been homeless. Okay. I know this, I have no resources. I have been in a 20-year relationship and the person dropped dead in the movie theater. Okay. I didn't lose my mind. I chose to remain optimistic. I chose to remain courageous. I chose to set goals because I knew that if I could just outlast the emotion, I could get through it. And so I think it's very careful, Kelly, that you and I don't create a culture that caters to weakness. We're compassionate, we're sympathetic, we're empathetic, we're communal, but let's not cater to weakness. We're all going through this together.
Yeah. Wow. Really well said. Love the great example. This is incredible, Joel. Your story, again, lots of great takeaways, listeners, on his example of just one of the fiction books that Joel has wrote. Goals that challenge you. I think goals challenge you. I think that's super important to just kind of think about and to, developing that optimism. And Joel hit on the head as well. Everyone's going through the COVID pandemic. It's not like your neighbor across the street isn't experiencing the COVID pandemic and can do whatever they want. Everyone's wrapped in this situation. So we gotta make the best of it and stay optimistic. I've been telling people too, or when I have friends or family or whoever reach out to me on how's it going, if I haven't talked to them in a while, I'd say like, yeah, things are going well. I'm doing the best I can, staying positive and sending those good vibes, because I think that's really important, and that's how we can overcome this crisis, as well as, challenging yourself, making the most of this time and setting those goals that are really important to help you, I guess, with that passion, or again, going back to that journey towards greatness. So Yeah, Joel, do you have advice for our listeners on where ways they can achieve their dreams and improve their mindset when going forward through change?
First, optimism. You can't have resilience without optimism. We hear a lot about resilience. I think I read today where um, Ariana Huffington, she said that her word of the year is resilience. That's her personal word of the year. But you can't be resilient without optimism. And if you think optimism is, I think optimism is an emotion, it's not. It's a perception. It's a way of choosing. Well, how do you choose? You're conscious of options. Okay, it doesn't require us. I mean, it may be a kind of a skill, but you choose to say there's two things I can look at this. I'm unemployed or now have an opportunity to create another income stream. Because if you rehash and if you keep rehearsing how horrible this is, it's disempowering. When I was homeless, I said, you know what, Joel, you're going to get out of this. And to think, Kelly, I was too proud to beg. I live in a city where if you go uptown, no offense, but people will beg because their mouth works. They don't even care. I said, Joel, you're not going to beg and you're going to get out of this. I said, how are you going to get out of this, Joel? I said, I don't know how, Joel, but you're going to get out of this. And you know how I got out of it? I moved toward my dreams. Every day, I'd go to the library. I'd check out a book. I'd watch motivational videos. So first is optimism. It's a perception, not an emotion. Use your free will to choose not to be a victim, because when you choose to be a victim, you put yourself in a vacuum where help is not available. You've got at least one friend, and I do too, we all do. No matter what you say to that person, they will shoot down every option that you give them because they've learned how to be negative. They have chosen to be a victim, and so they get into a vacuum, and nobody's going to come and stay there with you. So you still set a goal, and you got to set two kinds of goals. You got to set a process goal and an outcome goal. Because me saying, Joel, you're not going to be homeless, as I was still had nowhere to go. But that was my outcome was shelter. That was my outcome goal. But my process was go to the library and learn something. Why? Keep your attitude up. Because when you meet somebody, you got negative energy, they're going to feel it, and they're not going to help you anyway. So I had a process goal, and really I focused more on my process. What people do, how am I going to get out of this mess? That's the outcome. That's too big. I can't answer that right now. You can't answer that. But what process can you implement today that you may not see a result from? But you know, if you apply results over time, if you apply results over time, it will change overnight. It won't change overnight, but results over time bring overnight change. And you got to play the long game. This pandemic didn't just happen. We hear different reports, but there was evidence a year ago that if we didn't do something, this is going to happen. Even during the previous administration, they knew that we need to improve our ability to respond to national crises. Katrina taught us that. But did we upgrade FEMA? Did we address that? So this is not like this did not come out of the blue. It came out of a state of indifference to something that was unlikely. So set goals. Here's optimism. It's a perception and an emotion. Set goals, process goals versus outcome goals. And then the third thing is learn to laugh. When I was homeless, I said, Joe, I can't believe you have nowhere to go. I said, you always said you sleep in your car for your dream. Well, boy, you're doing it now. How does it feel? I said, it feels terrible. It feels horrible. That's really important because our attitude, our disposition, our internal emotional orientation is huge. So that's the short and long answer.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, we like the long answer here on the Daily Grind. I think, again, Joel, you provided us with lots of great takeaways and just able to, have that right mindset, improving it and going forward through changes. Lots of things, again, we mentioned earlier this episode, a lot of things are changing as we speak. The world things change overnight. Things change, next month, next year. So just gotta be ready for this and, have that right mindset. So super important. Thank you so much, Joel, on that advice. Joel, we talked about your daily schedule. What's on your daily grind for 2021? I guess we're right around the corner. Holidays are right around the corner and we're near to the new year.
I'm going to put all my energy and ability and bring this book to the nation, because there are things that are happening that, unless we address them in a very sustained and systemic and a very honest way, then we're going to create conditions that will be conducive for calamity. Mm-hmm. And so no one person has the answer, but I do believe that if y'all can get a new thought, then I have a new perception, and I have a new action, I have a new orientation, then that will morph into social change. So 2021, I'm just going to be pushing a new being. I'm going to a million podcasts. I'm going to write articles. I'm going to hold Zoom calls. I'm just going to prepare people, because, see, people, you don't have to be blindsided by change. Every change can't be foreseen. But you know what? That's why on a team, they prepare for just about every scenario, or even more simple. If you're married and you travel, I'm a minimalist. When I pack my suitcase, I take stuff that I hardly take anything that I need. But the average woman, she's got a just in case bag. She wants that thing. And I think that preparation is the key. So how do I prepare for something that's not going to happen? Let me say this, Kelly. I'm years younger. I'm not as young now. But from 16 until about 40, I struggled with suicide. I thought about it so much because life didn't make sense. And actually, when I was 26 and had a great job, et cetera, I said, if this is life, and I'm going to kill myself. I had a brand new car, a beautiful person in my life. I had a great job. People knew me. I said, if this is the pinnacle of existence, I'm going to check out. So what you have to do, how do you prepare for hardship? You make an agreement. I said, Joel, when I turned 40, I said, you would no longer contemplate suicide, because that stops you from enjoying the moment and always gives you an out instead of going through. So you have to make an agreement with yourself. We're not going to pout. Like with my friends, we don't rehearse the pandemic. I don't want to hear a daily count of what's going on in the country. I can't do anything about that. I don't work for the CDC. I'm not in healthcare. So you have to make certain agreements with yourself. This is how you prepare. I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to play the victim. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to be perceptive. I'm going to be preemptive. That's what you have to do. And that's on my agenda for 2021, emotionally and practically and psychologically. That's how I intend to actualize my humanity in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really well said, Joel. You have quite the grind going on under this year as well as going into 2021. We're excited for the new being and getting as many copies in the hands of to our listeners and just everyone, the 7.5 billion in the world here. So yeah, keep up the grind, as we say here on the Daily Grind. We also talked about motivation. You're very inspirational with your story. Do you have a word of the day to inspire our listeners?
Trust. Emerson says it this way. Ralph Waldo, he says it. And so I have an acronym for trust, because I was in a very tight situation in my life. And it was an extended state of despair. And so life said, you need to trust. So, well, how can I trust in this trauma? And the acronym trust is this: total reliance upon something transcendent. I have to see my way to know that there's a way. I have to see my out to know that there's an out. And when I say something transcendent, I mean that something transcendent produces practical results. I had a well-to-do, wealthy guy in this city find me on a website an invitation for an event that I was doing. I didn't even know him. 3 people removed from him sent it to him. He calls me, wants to have lunch. We have lunch, and long story short, that one little meeting, that one incident led to a 10-year relationship now that has been very beneficial for me. But you have to totally rely on something transcendent. Things are going to work out. You're going to get through this. You're going to come out on the other side. And don't get hung up on how. Most great people who achieve notoriety and renown, they couldn't have told you going forward how they're going to get to where they're going to get to. They told you, I'm going to take this step towards this goal. I'm going to do this action. I'm going to make sure this execution. But they could not tell you how is only seen in hindsight. So you have to trust. Mm-hmm. That's the basis of optimism.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
That's the basis of any relationship. Yeah, that's it. That's trust.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think it fits perfectly with today's episode and just embodying how goals challenge us, having that optimistic mindset, setting those goals, learning to laugh. I love all the great takeaways that you provide for us on the Daily Grind in this interview, which is fantastic. Last but not least, Joel, if our listeners have questions, comments, want to get in touch with you after the podcast, want to read your books, how can you do so?
Okay, my website is drjoelbryant.webs.com. So that's drjoelbryant.webs, WEBS.com. And then you email me at joel@joelbryant1.com. So joel@joelbryant1.com. And I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook, not so much Facebook, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn every day. Just talking about what I'm talking about here. But they can get the book to that website, and they can email me if they have any questions.
Wonderful. We'll put Joel's contact info in today's show notes, as always. Thanks again for tuning in today's episode. A big thank you to Dr. Joel Bryant for being on the podcast. It's coffee time all the time. Head over to our Instagram on Sundays, where we have our new feature, Sippin' Sundays. Each week, we'll be featuring a new coffee brand and review that flavor based on our Daily Grind podcast scorecard. So head over to Instagram, check out our reviews, and recommend one of your faves. I'd like to give a quick shout out to our daily grinders listening to us on the pod or have been grinding with us since season 1. Feel free to check out our journey so far and share your feedback with us. Give us a rating and quick review on Apple. Virtual high five to you in advance. Ways to find the Daily Grind: follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Daily Grind Pod. Check out our website at www.kjfwi.org. Daily Grind Pod, official podcast of the Kelly Johnson Foundation. Until next time, my name is Kelly Johnson. Have a great day.